Good morning, everybody. How's every quick recap? Pretty slow on crude. Crude oil is really slow. Currently in its first trade of the morning here for the 9 a.m. mini session. Pretty good sized trade if it could break through. 41.83. And if we can get to money management, 42.02. Be able to get at least a break even, and of course target one is power of quitting, so let's see if it can get there. Certainly trying, and it just broke through that swing level, so let's see if we get enough push here to at least get to break even. Got to break through the $42 a barrel level, where there it is. So just hit money management. Make sure you move your stops to break even if you're in that trade. 41.84. Hopefully we can get a couple ticks higher. On the pound Aussie, what's up with the pound Aussie? The pound Aussie, first trade of the morning, actually was a losing trade. That's unusual. 13 pips, small trade. So we'll be looking for another setup on that one. Unleaded gas had a nice morning. It did have that first losing trade, but came right back with a strong winner and power of quitting. If going to target 2 anyways, losing 64 ticks, but then able to pick up 88 and then some, depending on how many positions one is trading. Vicky, I see what happened to you. I'm not sure if you're going with a one and done approach, but 2 trades, getting to power of quitting, I'll take that any day of the week. Yeah, if you're one and done, you followed your plan, then well done. Unfortunately, the first trade lost, but I would encourage you to maybe look at more than one trade if that fits your lifestyle. Yeah, I haven't looked at Sub-Zero in a while either, Anthony. It's certainly on my list. I almost want to recruit somebody to help me develop and build a track record for some of those trade plans. There's just way too much on my table to be able to do it all. I'm not discovering that. I discovered that a long time ago. I agree with you, Vicky. That would be a good thing to test. It's easy to fast test something like that. I would start with fast testing it. You could blast through 100 sessions rather quickly, and John might have some information for you. What else? I figured since we're not really looking at the 5 tick on crude much, I'd throw up a, not throw up as in vomit, I would put up a crude oil chart, 377 tick with Counter Punch. So there you go. And if starting at 850, this one didn't do very well. I mean, actually, it just depends on if one got into this little trade here or not. But if starting at 9, which I haven't really considered the start time on this for quite some time because it's been a while. But anyway, it took 3 trades, the third trade, and it still may be negative, actually. But I just thought it would be good to look at something different. So there it is. Yeah, it's a counter punch chart. And it's been, just an old chart that's performed well over the years. All right, here comes crude, 1 tick shy of its full target. There it is, blasting through. So the 9 a.m. session on crude with Spotlight, with that 8 tick chart, definitely doing well, hitting its target for minimum power of quitting in a nice sized trade, 21 ticks. And unleaded keeps moving up. So, I mean, are these higher energy prices kind of front-running maybe a recovering economy? I don't know. All right, anyway, the markets have opened. If anyone's getting in sync with the Russell, it's clearly moving higher. 1573.1, targeting 77.4. And this is a full 1-point momentum bar. It's a couple ticks faster than the 8-tick. I mean slower, a couple ticks slower. And hitting its money management. If anyone's in that trade, make sure you move your stop to break even. Anthony, I'm assuming when you say 0.05, you're referring to crude oil, right, with Sub-Zero? One of the things about Sub-Zero is that, I mean, yeah, it's great. You could use the indicator. Or you can just learn how the strategy works, and you could use it as extra confirmation, or you could trade it without even using the indicator. So what I mean by that, here's the 5-tick. But you can see when the green line gets below the -20, that sets up the Sub-Zero condition, right? So when it moves up above and then back down below again, that gives you the Sub-Zero. So I'm not sure what trade you were referring to, because it gets to Sub-Zero. It must have been this setup, right? Was it the 909 setup? Is that the one you're referring to? So you could literally, yeah, right. So sometimes Spotlight picks it up, and in this case, there's the squeeze zone filter, but Sub-Zero, I don't believe, uses that filter. So there's your Sub-Zero trade right there without even having Sub-Zero on your chart. Just by noticing that the line went up above and then back down again, it's in the Sub-Zero condition, and you could trade Sub-Zero. And if you didn't have the setup there, sometimes you'll see a Sub-Zero, like in this case, let's see, in this case, earlier in the day, you would have just used the next set of dots, basically. So you can draw the trade using the techniques I've taught in the past. This would have been, which one's this one? Would have been that small trade, but that would have been the Sub-Zero trade right there. And maybe not big enough to make any money, but that's how you would do it anyway. So you could literally use Sub-Zero. Oops, what did I just do? I took off the calculator. You could use Sub-Zero without having Sub-Zero, I guess is the point. Oh, I took the thing off. Okay, that's all right. Look at the Russell. The Russell just exploded to the upside. Boy, wouldn't it be nice if the Russell starts performing again like it used to? Crude oil trying to get to its second target on the 8-tick momentum bar. There's our 5-tick trade chart again. Yeah, so the Russell just flying, hitting a perfect target 4 right out the gate. Nice trade. Unleaded continues to climb higher. And crude oil trying to get to its target 3 now. So what a way to start a Monday. All we need is our pound Aussie trade to work itself out. Well, we don't have a trade yet, but hopefully we'll get one in a bit. I still haven't decided what catapult module I'm going to work on next, but it seems like it's a toss-up between forex, energies, and stocks and options. So I'll figure that out, but I'm going to start working on it. And good morning again to everybody just joining us. Doing a quick recap. Crude oil and unleaded gas both hitting their power quitting goals pretty fast this morning, and the Russell as well. The YM still flat. I have a Counter Punch chart here, the one I use for the crude oil report, just because the 5-tick spotlight chart seems to just be taking up valuable real estate, since it's a chart that I think is too fast and the trades are too small, really. It's not that it's too fast. I just don't like the small trades, so I thought I'd give a different look and, something else to look at, basically. And it is in a nice long trade here as well, obviously, with the crude oil pushing up past $42 a barrel here. On its march to 50, I'm kind of excited about my long-term hold for my Ford Motor Company options, because it looks like Ford is poised to break out, hopefully. And Apple looking like it's ready to jump up to 460. It's at 452 now. It is up over $8 already, almost 2% on the day already. And I bet you that is not done. It looks like it wants to move higher with a very bullish consolidation right now. Yeah, Apple's got a 4-for-1 split. The prior split was 7-for-1. It was like 6 years ago or something like that, 6 or 7 years ago. Could you believe the cost basis of the first shares of Apple after all the splits is, I think it's somewhere down like less than 10 cents a share after this split. Pre-split, I think it's like 38 cents a share, something like that. My grandfather, who passed away a few years back at the young age of 108 years old, bought a couple thousand shares way back, went through all the splits. He passed away, left my mom and her 2 sisters 14,000 shares to split 3 ways. So imagine those 14,000 shares today times 4. 56,000 shares is what it would end up being of Apple. Yeah. Well, I mean, he never used a computer in his life. That's the irony. It was just a real shrewd, lucky. He was a pretty smart guy, but wow. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, what do you think of that one, Chiffon? I haven't looked at it in a while. I'm not sure about it. The 5-minute Euro US and the Pound US have been long-term trade plans. You could look at a Euro Yen, although the Euro Yen's, again, I haven't looked at it in a long time. If you're using CPX for day trading, you could look at momentum bars. I mean, the Pound Aussie works so well. This 8-pip momentum bar works so well with Spotlight that it probably works well with CPX as well. Of course, if you're using MT4, you kind of have to stick with your 5-minute charts, which is fine. But I think what you need to do is do your fast testing and spend time with the UTA spreadsheet and really figure it out. Wow, that's pretty good, John. You still have them? Wow, congrats on that. Netflix has split a few times, hasn't it? Oh, 7-for-1. Okay, cool. Well, they're probably going to end up splitting again. I imagine, well, we'll see if Apple kind of sets the stage on that and we get other companies following. That could be interesting. People like the stock splits because obviously they end up with a lot more shares, and then when it goes up again in price, they make a lot more money. Yeah, so Chiffon, that's really good. I'm glad that you're doing your back testing. Are you using MT4? And are you able to pull enough data to get a good amount of back testing? Some people could really fly with MT4 and use it really well. I'm not one of those. MT4 and me, it's like I'm in a one-legged butt-kicking contest. I'm hopping around on one leg and everyone else has 2 legs. That's what I feel like with MT4. MetaTrader 4, Vicky, it's just a standard charting platform for forex. Most brokers give it away for free. Counter Punch works on it, so a lot of people use it. And it's not a bad platform, but it does have its limitations. It's old. One thing I could recommend to you, Chiffon, and you let me know if you're interested in a link, is FX Synergy. The programmer and founder of which is a good friend of mine. He's over in Denmark. I know him well. Great guy, and his company's awesome. And FX Synergy is awesome. It's a platform that plugs in to MT4, and you use it as a trade manager interface. So you would place all your trades through FX Synergy, and then it just pipelines through MT4. And what's great about it is that there's it's just amazing tools. Like you can easily set up a trade that scales out. First of all, you can tell it what percentage risk to place on every single trade. So once you have your entry and stop put into FX Synergy, it knows what position size to place based on your limit. So I always put 2%, right? So it could do that for you. And then secondly, you could tell it to scale out a percentage of your profit at particular targets. So you're able to use the targets and scale out without having to place an additional trade for each target you want to come off on with MT4, because you know MT4 is real clunky. But with FX Synergy, it's a breeze. I've never tried it for day trading. I'm sure there's a way to do it because it does have point-and-click tradability, but they're really helpful over there. They can help you set it up. And for me, I use it for my swing trading because it's like, you know, if I'm asleep, I don't want to worry about pulling off 25% at target 2 or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah, I've already got it all set up. So it takes me just a moment, literally 1 or 2 minutes to set up a trade for swing trading with FX Synergy, and then it manages the entire thing. And I run it on a VPS, so it's always running 24/7. So that's how I do it. And if you're interested in that setup, you could send me an email, and I'd be happy to give you the links. If you go with FX Synergy, you get a discount with me. It does have a small cost. It's like $30 a month or something like that, but it's so worth it. It's a tool I couldn't even imagine not using. So just send me an email, and I'll respond to you. And then I also have a good VPS that works really great. So the VPS is awesome because it just your stuff runs 24/7, and you don't have to keep your computer on all the time. Hey Bob, welcome. Yeah, so this is the full Counter Punch Trader that we're looking at, and CPX2 is very similar. It's not going to be exact because what CPX2 cannot do, and you have to learn how to do this manually, is key level adjustments. And so you may see a trade that's a little bit out of sync because CPX2 will show it getting in at 0.09, but CPT will adjust that up to the 0.01. You know what I mean? It adjusts around zeros and fives because of how I have it set up. You would want to do that in your head. The CPX2 is for what it is. It's awesome. But CPT, it just has a lot more tools in it. Also, there's add-on trades that are turned on. You can turn those on, I believe, in CPX2. So you're wondering, I only got one trade at 42. What time was that? I mean, if you want, you can kind of review what I've got here, but I don't think there's going to be that big of a difference. You've got a 2-tick entry and a 2-tick stop down there. Yeah, I would imagine everything is probably the same, except that when you get down to the, this one has some filters also, and you have to do that manually with CPX. You know, you have to understand what the filters are. I don't know that they made a difference today, but those are the nuanced differences between Counter Punch Trader and Counter Punch Xpress. But right here I've got key level adjustments, and so you have to learn how to do that manually. So 918, is this the trade you're referring to? That's at 41.91. I don't see one at 42. Where would there be one at 42? Check your settings and see that you have a 2-tick entry and a 2-tick stop. Or yeah, I think, is it a 2-tick or 1-tick? I forgot. Maybe it's a 1-tick. Yeah, it's a 2-tick actually. Two-tick stop. Oh, that's the cancel bars. Let's see. Entry, stop, 2 ticks. And then the 2 cancel bars and the 4 max bars for setup. And you should be good. You may have to turn trades on. Like, are you only getting green trades? Have you turned on your white and purple trades? So that's another thing that would make a difference, is what trades you're showing. Okay, yeah, so 41.90. And this is exactly what I'm talking about, because notice that mine is at 41.91. That's because 90 is a key level. So what you got to learn from trading is that you would make the key level adjustment manually, and you would get long at 91, not at 90, right? If you're using key level adjustments, which we always do with crude oil. So that's just a little maneuver you need to learn. That's not built into the CPX2 calculator. That would come with the full Counter Punch Trader, where it does the key levels for you. And also, if you're only seeing green trades, there's no problem with that. You might prefer that. But you could and should learn the other trades. You should learn what they are, how they work, why they do what they do. Like, you can turn the white trade on, you can turn the purple trade on. Just open your calculator and set them to true, and then take a look, and you'll see you probably have this white trade also. Do you know where to do that or how? Give that a try, because the way the Counter Punch Xpress 2 is delivered is with simplicity in mind, so as not to overwhelm people. It only has the green trade turned on. And the reason why I did that is because I want you to not be intimidated by the calculator. I want you to feel like you can go into the calculator and use it and learn how to use it, because it's pretty powerful. And you could turn those setups on. So it's your first foray into using the calculator, which is why I have the white and purple trades off, so that you open up the calculator and actually use it and turn those trades on, and you'll see other things you can do with it. Obviously, Counter Punch Trader has got a lot more to it, much of which you can just learn how to do manually. Not everything. There's things in the Counter Punch Trader that there's no with Counter Punch Xpress. Counter Punch Trader has some average true range tools, which does a lot of amazing calculating for certain setups. But, I mean, you know, for 197 bucks. It's like way too much for way too little. It's such a great deal. Well, yeah, I don't think I'm going to keep it at 197 forever. But it's a pretty powerful little piece of software for the price of one winning trade, if you think about it. Yeah, Counter Punch is good, and I think that the training that comes with CPX2 is also, I think, really good. I mean, you learn a lot, but you got to embrace the Steps to Success guide as usual. That goes with all my stuff, because that's really where the rubber meets the road, and that's really where the difference is between success and failure, regardless of what strategy one uses. You have to learn how to be successful, and the only way to learn how to be successful is to prove to yourself your method will make you money. It boils down to that. If you don't prove it to yourself, the tendency is just to quit and chase the next great promise. And it may be a true promise, but if you don't prove it to yourself, you'll probably end up quitting that as well and chasing the next thing, and the cycle continues. So just kind of, to give you a little, well, you don't have, well, actually, this is for Bob's benefit. If you were to turn on the white trade, Bob, you would see this reversal here, right? The white trades are typically reversing trades. Those are counter punch trades. That's where the name comes from. And it's the only trade that requires the histogram, because the other two trades, for their price action confirmation, remember all the setups require a certain amount of different pieces of price action confirmation, and the green trade and the purple trade are all about the relationship of the 3 exhausting dots to the 1 or 2 prior. In this case, each one of these green trades is because your 3 exhaustion dots are a higher level than the set prior. The purple trade is in between, one higher, one lower, because it operates on a higher time frame. It's a little more abstract. You have to wrap your mind around what it's trying to do, but that's why it's a very effective trade. Oftentimes it's a pretty big trade, and it works because it's assimilating exhaustion points on a chart that's a higher time frame, that's slower. So if you really think it through, you understand how and why it works the way it does. That's the purple trade. But it has nothing to do with anything else but price action, because the exhaustion dots are based on the bars associated to them, and it's pure price action. You got the opposite closes in the other direction, basically, to really simplify. So, but the white trade, there's no dots to really compare it to other than it's the highest set, right? There's no more going up. How do you get a short trade? What do you compare it to? You would need to have it lower than the set prior in order to get a green trade, but in this case it's higher than the sets prior. It's the highest set of all, and so it needs something additional to confirm it. Otherwise you get a lot of false signals. So that's where the histogram comes in, because what the histogram does, it also looks at a higher time frame chart. It simulates a chart 5 times slower. So 377 ticks times 5 is kind of what this histogram is attempting to do. And so when the fast line crosses the slow line, that is, the cyan line crosses the yellow line, and the histogram is in the blue, or was in the blue, typically it's in the blue, so those two things, and then you get your final set of exhausting dots, all of that line up to give you confirmation on the counterpunch trade, right? Because the slower time frame chart is also turn direction. So you're getting in with the faster chart in corroboration with the turning of the trend 5 times higher as well, you see? And that's the point of the counterpunch trade. It's a counterpunch, so you're rope-a-doping, leaning against the ropes, and as soon as the last set of exhaustion dots occur, you don't know that's the last set, obviously, at the right edge of the chart. That's the thing, that why you need the extra confirmation. You learn that it possibly is, and likely it is, by the histogram itself turning as well. That's because there's no other way to, yeah, you could use a different indicator for confirmation. It doesn't have to be the histogram, but the histogram is what is part of the strategy, and that's what ended up being, it's funny, it's what the strategy is called, Counterpunch Trader, and it was the last setup to be developed. So you could see it on the opposite side with the white trade. Definitely didn't work here, but then the second time around it sure did. And what do you get when you have a breaking of support that fails without any follow-through, which is what you get here, and then you get this counterpunch again. So notice that you get the setup, it's a warning, you don't have any targets because it's not a legitimate trade yet, right there. How come there aren't any targets? Because the histogram hasn't crossed. The cyan line has to still cross over. So you have the 3 dots, and you have the setup bar, but you don't have the histogram confirmation until 1 bar later. So the entry is based on the original setup bar, but you don't see the targets, and the actual legitimate bar that you could now place a trade with until it closes above the yellow line down here. That's why it looks the way it does, you see. So these are all things you need to learn, but then that's a counterpunch trade. That's the beauty of the white trade. And then you got all the green trades that you could throw on there as add-ons, and you could use those as primary trades. So one cool thing that Counterpunch Trader gives you that CPX doesn't is the ability to select any of these trades and call it a primary trade, so the calculator will track it. And you do that by setting a start time in the calculator. So this is 9:18, and let's say that was the trade I wanted, the one that Bob was mentioning. I can come up to setup start time and set it to 9:18 or 9:17 or whatever, and it's going to ignore everything left of that and focus on that as the first trade and the one that gets tracked. You see? Isn't that beautiful? So Counterpunch Trader has some amazing tools in addition to and beyond Counterpunch Express. But again, Counterpunch Express is called Express for a reason. It still gives you these great setups. You just have to learn how to use it. And the best thing to do is to study what each of the three setups are, how they work, and why. That's what's going to give you insight that'll help set your trading on course. And some of the principles I always talk about always apply. When you break out to a new high or new low without follow through or any significant support and resistance, you could always expect a trade in the opposite direction has a good chance of being a strong move. Doesn't mean it will always be a strong move, but you should expect that there's a good chance it will be a strong move. And those are tradable situations for sure. And while I was talking, Spotlight got short on the YM, and it came down. So not a big trade, 20 points. Trying to get to 46. It looks like it got to 47. So missed by one tick, and that's enough for power of quitting, even though that trade's still going. And anyway, target one is really a target that you can take profit on with a 14 tick momentum bar with YM, even though it's a real small trade. So if you were to put Counterpunch on this trade here, yeah, it's interesting because it probably would have been the same trade. You'd have to look at the histogram. But this is a really bizarre trade because it's using, this is why it's such a small setup. And if you understand how these setups work, you would be able to spot the reason. These are the three dots being used, and you could use any of these bars for a setup as long as it closes down and below the balance line up to 4 bars to the right of the third dot. And so you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this one finally does close below, but it barely closes below. So at 5, 6, 8, and the balance line is at 5, 6, 9. So it closes one tick below the balance line, 4 bars over the last possible bar for a setup, but it's a lot higher up than where it may have happened over here, but it didn't. And so you're measuring the highest point of these 3 dots to the low of the setup bar, and it's not a big distance, and that's why you got such a small trade. And it was a perfect trade. I mean, it missed target 2 by 1 tick, and now it's moving higher. So there's a reason the dynamics of these setups work the way they do. There's this uncanny, bizarre thing in nature. I don't know how else to describe it. I was lucky enough to discover it, but it's the measurement of those 3, the lowest or highest point of those 3 exhaustion dots to the lower high of the setup bar, depending on if you're going long or short. And you measure that and get your X factor for calculating your targets, and that is what produces these accurate trades. Go figure. It works on all time frames, all charts, basically. Who would have, it's weird that stuff like that happens, but I mean, you can look at just random trades and just see how often it hits that target or almost hits the target perfectly. and they're always different sizes based on that measurement. So who invented that? I mean, I just discovered it by accident, I guess, or by a lot of hard work, but I didn't invent it. It existed before I discovered it, obviously. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. Just talk your ears off for the last 35 minutes. Any questions? Everything has hit power of quitting except pound Aussie, which just got long. So let's see if this can break out of its mundane, choppy sideways pattern. The failure to go lower maybe sets up a strong move higher, but it could still consolidate up and down. We don't know yet, but that is the second trade of the plan. 82. Actually, it should be 82.46 because we do the key levels in our head, just like with Counter Punch Xpress. I don't have them turned on for this forex chart. So the entry would be at 82.46. But that's still enough to try to get to target 1 as its minimum target here. And we'll see if it can. Yeah, Bob, hope that helped. Feel free to follow up with questions. Anybody trading the out the gate when the market opens catapult might have been pretty happy with this morning's move on the ES and the YM. The 10 a.m. crude, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, we don't know yet, but that winning trade was prior to 10 a.m. So now looking for the first trade of the 10 a.m. mini session. And Bob and Chiffon, both of you, you guys can create mini sessions with Counter Punch. You can, figure out a time from start to finish, X amount of trades, and then fast test it. Like if you want to try a similar idea, get your window of time that you think would be best for you to trade and start there, and then just try to quit positive with a majority of the time. And you can easily fast test that by counting winning and losing sessions. Just a real fast count. That's a really great way to start, to try to really figure out what to trade and when. You fast test a bunch of charts, let the cream rise to the top and show you. Because if you do it enough, something's going to jump out at you as being really good, and that's the one you focus on with your UTA work, if you're following the success guide. Right on, Vicky. Have a good day. Vicky's working her tail off, doing exactly what I just said. Fast testing, back testing, building her trade plan. I'll be right back, you guys. All right, guys, I'm back. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. Chiffon, you mentioned something about the counterpunch swing trading charts, and if you needed any help with those, I will tell you that I do have slightly different inputs or settings for the entry and the stop for the daily charts. I use a larger entry and a larger stop, and the idea is actually just to get a little price action, additional price action confirmation to push through a little further up to trigger into a trade, and a little more protection on the stop side. So I could certainly, I believe I'm using 20 pips on the entry and 10 pips on the stop. Yeah, there you go. So I already told you. The pound yen 4-hour chart is different. The New Zealand US chart, those are two different charts. Those charts were created with automation, and they use some of the tools in the full Counterpunch Trader that you wouldn't be able to do with Counter Punch Xpress, because they use some of the average true range calculations. But I thought it would be interesting to pull up the two 5-minute counterpunch charts that you mentioned, the pound US, or you mentioned that. I mentioned the Euro US. Both I think are good. At least they were last I checked. But after watching them for several years every day, I'm pretty confident they still do the same thing today as they did then. And this is the pound US from today using a 5-minute chart. So just starting at the typical 8:30 time, you got the setup right here. This is probably the one you saw. And a pretty strong move. I do key level adjustments, but I don't think it makes that big of a difference. Every now and then it might. I think it's kept me out of a trade from time to time, and it's kept me in a trade, adjusting the stop. So yes, I'm not going to get on a trade in front of 5s and 0s like I would typically do. A tiny adjustment on those big trades. You know, again, most of the time it won't matter, but every now and then it does, and that's always nice. So the difference between Counterpunch and Spotlight is very evident in this chart, because with this chart, I don't know if this is what you're doing with Counter Punch Xpress. Using, and I believe I made this indicator available with the Counter Punch Xpress 2, is the trend line indicator, where you only go long when the line is blue, you only go short when the line is red. That's not something Spotlight cares about. And you can see that the exhaustion dots that set up this trade are one set higher than the prior. That's what makes the green trade. Doesn't care about anything else. Only that the exhaustion dots are higher than this one set prior, right? On the low side, because these are for exhausted sellers, so we go long. Spotlight doesn't care about any of that, and that's partly why Spotlight has a overall better win rate, is that Spotlight is pickier. That does not take away anything from Counterpunch. You just have to understand how Counterpunch works and know what trades are probably not good versus the ones that have a better chance of succeeding. Usually the first green trade after reversal tends to be pretty good, because just think about action, reaction, subsequent action. You're typically able to catch a subsequent action on a, when it's still early. And then the way these exhaustion dots line up really close to this blue line, that's what was the inspiration for creating Spotlight, because the first trade of Spotlight came from my observation. It was on the 50 moving average, not on this. This is a 20 SMA. It's just a fancy one. But we also have a setup with Spotlight now where you can trade the same thing off of a 20 SMA. But it was my observation of when those exhaustion dots line up close to key lines, the trades tend to be better and work out at a higher percentage. And so that gave birth to Spotlight. And Spotlight doesn't care about the position of the exhaustion dots one to the other. It cares more about the exhaustion dots in relationship to certain key moving averages, as well as its unique OSOB indicator. So it's totally different, even though the setups work the same as far as the exhaustion dots and the setup bar and the measurements. That's what Spotlight took from Counterpunch, basically. So learning Counterpunch is a great preliminary, it's a prequel to learning Spotlight. Because if you learn Counterpunch well, you can learn Spotlight really easily. But anyway, so that's the 5-minute chart with Counterpunch. I'm wondering what that would look like with Spotlight, although I could see that that would be a similar trade. But let's just do something fun and copy this pound Aussie chart on Spotlight, and let's make it a 5-minute pound US chart. Now, I've never really looked at time-based charts with Spotlight. Spotlight is really designed for dynamic charts like range bars, but that doesn't mean it couldn't work on a time-based chart. It's just something I've never pursued because I already have Counter Punch. But it could be a unique idea, and there's only one way to find out. We're not going to find out today, but we'll get an indication. It's going to be the same trade if I turn on the blue trades, you know, the 20 SMA trades. But let's just see. So there's a 5-minute chart. Let's just look back a little further. Yeah, so that looks pretty nice, doesn't it? I'd have to turn add-on trades on. So what this trade is, this trade came earlier, but you could see this is Spotlight. You can see the difference. Spotlight looks a lot different actually than Counter Punch, but it's using the exhausting dots and the price action in much the same way. So if we now turn on add-ons, and we could turn on other types of setups, and we can make the targets bigger. I think the targets in Spotlight, in Counter Punch, are 1.5. Let's do that. I'm sure it is 1.5, 2, because this makes up for spread as you make the targets a little bigger. And then if we go to add-ons, so we could see more trades. And then let's see, let's go ahead and turn on the blue, you know, the 20 SMA trade, because that would be an additional trade that will work well. We could do it off the 200 also. Well, let's not do that for now. Let's just try this. And then I'll go ahead and show the 20 SMA, which I have right there. Yeah, so this is the same trade, I believe, as the one on Counter Punch. Let's take a look. So that's entering, I don't know if you could see that, 30.59, which I would make 61. And that's 30.59, which I would make 61. So it's the same trade because of the relationship of the 3 dots to the line, not because of its relationship to the prior dots. It's just coincidentally the same setup. But just to give you the evolution, the genesis of how Spotlight developed, that's a little lesson for you guys on how that happened. And you can analyze the difference between the two strategies. So the dots have to be within 4 pips of the key line, and that's why there's another add-on trade here. And it's kind of large because you can't even see the targets. They're up there though, way up there. These targets give you 19, 26, 33, and 40 pips. These targets give you 19, 26, and 33. So that's interesting, 19, 26, 33. Yeah, the only thing it doesn't have is a target 4. But the first 3 targets are identical to what you see here on that add-on trade on the Spotlight Master Suite. Why did that happen? And again, I could easily turn this on. I can come here and say, well, I don't want to start trading this early. I want to start trading at 8:30. So I can go ahead and use that nifty tool I showed you on Counter Punch, which Spotlight has it also. So you can open up the calculator in Spotlight and set, oh, maybe Spotlight doesn't have it. Does Spotlight have it? Maybe it doesn't. I always wanted Spotlight to have it. Oh, shoot. Nope. That's something Counter Punch can do and Spotlight can't do. Totally forgot about that. Oh, well. I know it's in Catapult. Yeah, I thought I had it put in here, but I guess I don't. Never got it. I lobbied for it. That was when I was still with NetPicks. It never happened. Oh, well. Of course, Spotlight also turns green when you're long, and Red when you're short, which is new. In relationship to Counter Punch doesn't do that. Yeah, it would have been useful, I agree. I still might end up doing that, I don't know. And then you got another big difference is the OSOB indicator, which is very useful if you understand it. But that's what gave the green trade. And it's based on this trend strength line, and when it gets over a certain level, 0, the market's going to be overbought or oversold. In this case, it was oversold because the trend strength is for the downtrend. It is a lagging indicator, but that's why it works so well as a confirming indicator. That's all we use it for. Because you'll notice it took time for to start moving higher and higher based on this trend strength. So it doesn't matter the direction of the trend. When it's moving up, that's an indication of a strong trend. You just have to realize you can't just trade off it by that because it's a lagging indicator. But when it gets above a certain level, that indicates trades in the opposite direction are starting to look appealing. In this case, you don't have one yet. But look how high it got. Got up to 15. All it has to do is get above 0. Also, you got the pink bars spiking above, which is another oversold or overbought indicator. So 2 overbought indicators on the same histogram. But that also could signify a real strong trend. So you could get these sessions that are just a strong trend that keeps trending for a long time, and then trades in the opposite direction and counter trend trades are obviously going to fail. So that's different than how Counterpunch works. Counterpunch is going to be looking at that histogram, the high trend chop indicator. You see? All right, Chiffon, glad it helped. Definitely interesting. There's a lot of good trading opportunities, lots of treasure out there for those who do their homework. These strategies work really well. It's just a matter of understanding how and putting the time in to create trade plans you can prove to yourself using simple concepts. But you can see here the histograms crossing over and the 3 dots up here. This could be a white trade setting up right now. Probably will be. You'll also get a trade here for a different reason because of the overbought conditions on this histogram. So 2 different histograms doing entirely different things, but will probably produce the same trade to the short side in this case. So I have another question for you guys just to stimulate your minds before I decide to say goodbye to you, which is going to happen in a few minutes. For all of you Catapult traders, those using Catapult, do you guys remember the significance of the 25, 270, 25 in the high trend chop indicator and how that works with Catapult? Does anybody remember that other than John? Throwing you guys a brain twister. See who's been studying. Anybody? Dun da da. I'll take that as a resounding no. Well, in that case, you'll have to come back Wednesday and I'll give you the answer. Stay tuned. Coming soon to a theater near you. Man, I miss movie theaters. Oh, come on. I think that's super fun. I'll give everyone a chance to roll up their sleeves, shove their nose in the instruction manual, and come back with the answer on Wednesday. Because I don't see anybody stepping up to the microphone, or the keyboard for that matter. So nobody knows the significance of these three numbers with Catapult. I am shocked. All right, fair enough. Remind me on Wednesday. I'll give you a crash course because they're pretty significant and they could really, those numbers in conjunction with a few others can increase your win rate with Catapult significantly if you only knew how to use them. And with that, I will bid you all good day. I'm leaving. It was nice. I hope you enjoyed the session, and I'll see you guys on Wednesday. John will be here tomorrow. Everyone have a great session. See you then. Bye-bye.